Okay, Michael J. here. How is everybody doing? We've got a really great show for you today. And what we're going to start off with, it's becoming one of my favorite topics, actually. Donald J. Trump, sedition, insurrection, the fall of democracy in America, and where will it end? What can I say? Told you there was a lot here. Not much else we can do. Okay, so let's start off with now the real right-wing guys here are going to say, oh no, a Democrat. Of course he's got... Listen, folks, got to understand one thing. We just deal with facts. Doesn't matter where they come from. If it's factual, it's got a historical reference that's bona fide, we're going to use it. So pay attention here. Let's see what happens. I know what's going to happen.
Action was a mob riot, and none of this happened spontaneously. It was not some kind of dramatic improvisation. This was a carefully planned and staged assault on American democracy. And
okay, he's right. This was very well coordinated, very carefully planned to achieve a result. Overthrow the American government, put a minority candidate from a presidential election into a majority position. This is what it was.
You know, overwhelmingly people have been cooperating with the committee, so we've got lots of information about what took place, and we're going to expose each and every level of it. Of course, there are still some people who are holdouts the closer you get to Donald Trump, but in general, the picture is becoming clear to us.
And it's clearer to you and the rest of the committee right now than it is to the public. Fair to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, remember that January 6th at 1 p.m. was not some kind of coincidental date.
Okay, so you got to remember, he said January 6th at 1 p.m. Okay. You have to remember, it wasn't until 3:13 p.m. on that date that Trump put out a tweet. So that whole time, between 1 and 3:13 p.m., the Capitol got breached, overrun, people died. Those are the timelines, that's the facts.
This was the moment when the Constitution calls for Congress to meet in joint session to count Electoral College votes. And the whole plot at this point, Donald Trump having failed to coerce Republican legislatures to overturn election results and having failed to convince election officials like Brad Raffensperger in Georgia to fabricate election results, now was focused on Mike Pence. And what they wanted to do was to get Pence to declare unilaterally powers that he doesn't enjoy, to simply reject and repudiate Electoral College votes. But they thought if they could just get him to take Joe Biden from 306 in the Electoral College to below 270, at that point it would kick the entire contest into the House of Representatives under the 12th Amendment for a so-called contingent election. And in that election, we would be voting not one member, one vote, but one state, one vote. And they had 27 states to 22 for the Democrats, and one Pennsylvania split down the middle. I don't think that the at-large rep from Wyoming would have gone for that fraud, but that still would have left them with 26 votes in the Trump camp. And at that point, of course, Michael Flynn had been urging Donald Trump, once installed into office, having seized the presidency for another 4 years, to invoke the Insurrection Act and to proclaim something like martial law.
The infamous Michael Flynn. The infamous Michael Flynn. He's the Turkey connection. Horse trading with Turkey for years. And you thought this is all bullcrap. No. This is not all bullcrap. This is real stuff. Let's see what he has to say further about this topic.
Call in the National Guard to put down the chaos and the violence and the insurrectionary activity that he had unleashed against us.
Okay, you got to remember also, Mark Meadows was knee deep. He was friggin' neck deep. He was up above. He was so far deep, it was above his 13th chakra. 13th chakra, you say? Yeah. That's far. That's high. Right, it's above the crown, folks. So Sadhguru is one of the few guys that may understand that statement and the propensity thereof, but nonetheless, have I digressed? No. This was friggin' huge. Absolutely huge. And Michael Flynn, General, martial law. Get him into the driver's seat and then clamp it down with martial law. These guys are brutal. They had a plan, and it was a brutal plan. And you got to remember, these rioters built a stage out front for the hangman noose. They're going to hang Mike Pence if they got a hold of him. And here's what's unbelievable. I got to give Mike Pence credit. Throughout all this, you know, he was always by Trump's side, right from the very beginning. Doesn't matter what Trump said. Trump says drink bleach to get rid of the coronavirus. He was still there, wouldn't contradict the president. Even after the hangman's noose and he had to run for his life for Secret Service agents, he still stands by the Republican Party. So that's one thing about the Republican Party, solidarity. They stand together, whether right, whether wrong. They stand together. That's what you have to understand.
And, there's a radio interview that surfaced.
By the way, as far as solidarity, the Democrats can learn something from that big time. And in particular, two senators, one called last name Sinema, and the other one, Manchin. They can learn from that, too, because neither one of them understand zero-sum economics. They sabotage the country, they sabotage their party, and they got to ask themselves a lot more questions because, ignorance will only take you so far.
I'm sure you've seen this, of House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy speaking just a few days after the Capitol attack. He talks about a conversation that he had with Trump. Let's listen.
I say he has responsibility. He told me personally that he does have some responsibility. I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, that was January 12, 2021. Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and pretty much every other Republican, except for less than what you can fit into each finger on your hand. So, enough of that. We're not going to beat this horse much further. We're going to move on to other stuff here. And there's another thing you're not remembering. And this, I brought this up with a recent episode, and that was the fraudulent conveying of documents in order to reverse the electoral vote count for different states. There was 5 states there. You had Nevada, you had Georgia, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and obviously one more. I forget which they had, but there was 5 states altogether. And Republican Party individuals. Oh, Arizona. Arizona's the 5th one. Republican Party individuals, like the guy from Arizona, on camera. He's the guy that signed off. He's the guy that submitted the documents, but when he was questioned about it, His answer. Unprecedented times needs unprecedented action. There's no case law. There's no precedence. So he took it upon himself to create, or whoever gave him direction, because he said talk to the RNC party leaders. So won't say who gave him direction, but he's the guy signed off on it. He's the guy that put the papers out there. And so here's the question and the answer. Because you got to understand, he stated himself, unprecedented. No case law, no precedent. So just because they create a moral belief does not give them the right to act upon it. Do you understand? Anybody out there? Just because you think a guy murdered somebody doesn't give you a right to arm yourself and go hunt him down and kill him. Do you understand? Unbelievable. So they create the crisis. They provide their own solution. And then they say it's all justified. That's how they work. That's how the Kremlin works. That's how the FSB works. And covert intelligence operations within the United States, such as the CIA, operate that way as well, you know. You think the going way back, and this is why the U.S. and Iran got a lot of history, how'd the Shah of Iran get into a position of power and be supported by the U.S.? Well, guess what? CIA sent an economic hitman to create the crisis. They got the Shah of Iran in there to fix the problem. And there you go. Simples. Simples. As Ned Flanders would say, yipper-doodle. Okay, so let's pivot to the main screen here. We're going to go a little more in depth. And so you ask, what are we going to go more in depth with? Well, I'll tell you right now there, Pilgrim. Here you go. Undermining the U.S. Capitol
lawmakers
attack.
in Michigan are under federal investigation for submitting a document which falsely claimed Donald Trump.
Okay. So, going back to the latter part of last week, brought up Marjorie Taylor Greene using the Second Amendment rights and twisting it so far around in such a way that she's given energy and enabling the general public by giving them a reason, because she created another moral belief, so she created the crisis, that they can bear arms to take out the Democrats, which are supported by the Constitution, but she twisted it so far around that it wouldn't exist in her world. So she created this moral belief, gave energy, and you wonder why last year a bunch of rogue people plotting to kidnap the Michigan governor. Like, come on, folks, you gotta wake up and stop playing this friggin' nonsense. People's lives. And here's the other thing: you're the engine for the economy of the world, and you're messing up big time. What is this? The fall of the Roman Empire again? Are we witnessing the fall of the Roman Empire, 2022? So here's the deal. I mentioned Arizona. Now, mentioned Michigan also, but here, 16 Michigan Republicans. So you got Trump saying the deep state. Even at Arizona on the weekend, he's got a rally. I'm going to put state legislators, governors, attorney generals in place to make sure this stuff doesn't happen. And all he's doing it for, and all the Republicans are helping him to do it, is to make sure that they never lose, because they'll put forth a fraudulent argument, put forth fraudulent papers to justify it. They'll put themselves in position of power to justify as the fix for the crisis they created. And it's right out of the Russian playbook as well, which we're going to get to. You betcha. So let's move forward with the 16 Michigan Republicans.
Won their state in the 2020 election. The probe is focused around 16 state lawmakers who signed a letter in December of 2020 refuting Joe Biden's win by 154,000 votes in Michigan. That document was then reportedly sent to the U.S. Senate and District Court after police blocked the group from entering the state capitol on the day Michigan's electoral ballots were cast.
The Capitol is closed unless you have an office here to conduct business today, or if you are taking part in the electoral.
So here you've got it. Here are the Republicans. They've got all their phony documents on hand. They're trying to storm and represent as the electoral representatives of the state. Meanwhile, I believe it was 16, was already there and accounted for. You know, they do have a list. And when they do arrive, they do check them off. So, of course, they're not being allowed in there because it's unlawful. They already have the representation in there. But this is to the extent that Donald J. Trump at all would go to overturn an election.
College process. Anybody else is not permitted to come in.
We're electors.
Yeah, the electors are already here. They've been checked in.
Not all the electors are inside.
Capitol is closed. All 16 electors that we've been advised by the governor's staff that we're going to be here to vote in the electoral college have been checked in. They're already here.
But the GOP electors, I'm sorry.
I understand. The Capitol is closed.
But the fraudulent ones won in.
Let's bring in Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel. Thank you very much for being on this morning. You referred to federal prosecutors this probe. What law did these 16 state officials break?
They broke laws, folks. They'll do anything.
Well, we believe that they violated both state laws and federal laws. And, you know, we had evaluated and we're prepared to move forward with a couple different
angry.
state law violations.
You can just
there was
tell by her
forgery
body
of a
language.
public record, as well as election law forgery.
Okay, folks, we're not going to keep beating a dead horse. Pretty obvious. Pretty obvious? Except for the diehard Trump guys that believe, I just won't even go into it. It's just amazing how people will fail to just do some research. Do some research. Don't take somebody's word for it. And then they'll see at the insurrection all these Trump flags, but because they were told it's Antifa, they say, oh, they're Antifa people. Come on now. You've been gaslit like you wouldn't believe. Fox News, OAN, every right-wing organization. And what are you going to do? Okay. So now, you got the Oath Keepers. These guys are like, you know, paramilitary group. Now on screen here, I'm going to put on screen this here right now, is the head guy of the Oath Keepers. You know, they had a whole crew there. All set up with paramilitary gear, helmets, goggles, everything that you could need. They had a backup group with arms waiting for reinforcements. Like, these guys were ready to do some serious crap here. Serious stuff.
That it was charging Rhodes and 10 of his co-conspirators with something called seditious conspiracy for their roles in the January insurrection. Seditious conspiracy is a rarely used Civil War-era statute reserved only for the most serious of political criminals. And a look at the court documents for Rhodes' arrest reveals why the government believes seditious conspiracy is warranted. They'd been allegedly planning for January 6th for months. On November 9th, 2020, after Biden had been projected the winner, Rhodes apparently instructed his followers to go to D.C. to let Trump know that the people are behind him, and he hoped that Trump would call up the militia. It will be a bloody and desperate fight, Rhodes warned. We are going to have a fight. And although Rhodes and the Oath Keepers had prepared for the fight...
Violence solves everything, eh? If we can't get our way doing it the right way, we'll just take up arms and go and fight. Come on, people.
Had gathered weapons to fight. A big part of right-wing media propaganda over the past year has relied on, well, it's relied on talking points like these.
None of the so-called insurrectionists had...
Oh, good old Tucker Carlson. I didn't think he'd be showing up again, but here's one of the great gaslighters of the American media landscape. Tucker Carlson. Oh my, what a surprise. This makes my day.
Had guns. When was the last time we saw an insurrection like that?
Except the Oath Keepers did have guns, lots of guns. As our colleague Ben Collins at NBCnews.com points out, on the day before the insurrection, posts from an online forum favored by the militants showed that the plan was to go all night and transport in the guns later, once they felt they had control over the Capitol. Here's a photo of some of those guns on January the 5th in Virginia, ready to head to D.C. From the indictment, while certain Oath Keepers inside of Washington, D.C. breached the Capitol grounds and building, others remained stationed just outside of the city. Teams were prepared to rapidly transport firearms and other weapons in support of operations aimed at using force to stop the lawful transfer of power. Again, the plan, it seems, was to take over the Capitol first and then bring in the weapons to secure it second and overturn the presidential election by force, if necessary, third.
Oh, it was an insurrection. So how many of the participants in that insurrection have been charged with insurrecting, with sedition, with treason? 0.
Except it's not 0, at least not anymore.
Yeah. Tucker Carlson, the master of gaslighting. Gotta love him. Gotta love him. Okay, folks. We're not going to beat you up with this stuff. Not going to beat you up with this stuff. Because I'm going to tell you, here's the new thing. Now that all this stuff's news... Oh yeah, it just gets more comical, nonsensical. You just wouldn't believe how nonsensical, because I had this already. So that's why I was quite surprised to see Tucker come up in that last video. So we're going to pivot to Mr. Tucker Carlson. Guy we all love to watch. Take it away, Tucker. Take it away, brother.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Not trying to be cruel this...
Of course not. Listen, folks. This guy needs some love. It's the only thing that's going to help him. You got to forgive him. He knows not of what he'd do. You know? You got to understand, we got to forgive. We just can't... You can't go for revenge. Put the culprits in the position they should be in and take them at face value for what they are, but don't take their energy any further. You just got to cut it with a knife, move on. So what's Tucker going to gaslight the United States of America and its great people now with?
It's Wednesday, just reading the numbers. Joe Biden is the most unpopular president that the United States has had in a very long time.
It's the best he can come up with
Voters
while
dislike
an
Kamala
insurrection, a
Harris
coup
even more.
just happened?
And that's a problem because
Okay.
this is supposed to be the new administration's honeymoon period, the part where everyone thinks they're great. So it's not getting better from here. This
You got to admit, he romanticizes better than Shakespeare did, don't you think?
is as beloved as the Biden administration is going to get. Smart Democrats can read the numbers, they understand this, and they're working on a solution. This week, two of them wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal calling on the party to support Hillary Clinton for president in 2024. Hillary is the best positioned candidate to win a national election, they argued. She's also, they noted, younger than Joe Biden. Former President Bill Clinton agrees with this, or says he does.
Are you kidding me? It was a mistake for Hillary Clinton to represent the party in 2016. What makes you think it's a better position now than that? Give me a break. This is the best people can come up with? Find somebody new. Forget this. She understands government much better than a Donald J. Trump will ever in 4 or 5 lifetimes. There's no doubt about that. I watched the debates, but back then, I thought Hillary Clinton was a mistake to represent the Democrats for the presidential race. I still maintain that position now, and I'm not budging. Just simple as that. Okay, keep the gas lighting up there. Let's see how you're going to create another crisis here and make the Republican, which used to be considered a party of law and order. How can you be a party of law and order when you're doing all these fraudulent conveying of documents, pulling an insurrection by organizing it in order to commit a coup upon the American Republic? Like, come on now. Let's give him a couple minutes here.
Anyway, Bill Clinton told People magazine that his wife is, quote, the most qualified person to run for office in my lifetime, including me.
Can't verify this.
In fact, failing to elect Hillary in
putting it out
2016 was, in Bill Clinton's studied estimation, an historic national tragedy. Quote, one of the most profound mistakes we've ever made.
Well,
Really.
that makes me feel
The
warm
good
and
news
comfy.
is we now have a chance to correct that mistake. And you don't get those very often in life. Typically, when you do something rash or stupid, you've got to live with the consequences. It's probably happened to you. One night you're listening to Born to Run after too many drinks. The next thing you know, you've got Bruce Springsteen's face tattooed on your lower back. It's embarrassing. It's also permanent. Think of Hillary Clinton as America's national tattoo remover. She alone can erase the stain of our youthful bad judgment. God bless that woman. But wait a second.
God bless you there, Tucker. We've had enough of you, buddy. That's enough. You've gaslit enough. Oh, my. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Unfriggin' believable. This is what we're relegated to?
A second, you say.
Holy moly. Tucker Carlson. Okay, so I'm gonna make a huge pivot here, and I'll explain why. Just watch it for a bit. Let me know what you think. I'm not even responding to comments. You're welcome to put your 2 cents out there. Free will's very important. And we're going to pivot to the recent Ukrainian crisis. Russia, over 100,000 troops, including heavy equipment, on the verge to attack Ukraine. Another example of create the crisis, provide the fix, and then lock it down in your favor. We've already gone through this earlier in this segment. Where do you think this playbook comes from? Where do you think Trump gets this playbook from? Who is his best friend? Putin. Helsinki. On the stage. I see no reason to not take his word for it. And here's the other thing. Nobody's brought this up whatsoever. How many private meetings did Trump have with Putin with no note takers? You know, that was always a standard procedure to have note takers. No private meetings without a note taker and an interpreter. And if Trump had a private meeting with Putin, and somehow a note taker was there, he'd confiscate the notes. Say, too bad, girl. Too bad, guy. You know, you don't hear about this, and you don't see to the extent that this is gone. And right after the Mueller probe's over, Trump was protected by the Republican Congress that's supposed to be the conscience of the people. Barry Goldwater was in the Nixon situation. But the Russian entanglement within the Republican Party is much deeper than you realize, folks. And you just don't get it. And I got to tell you, I've seen all the signs are there. I've been down this road. I've seen this stuff happen. I know how to ruin people's lives. People get killed. Good people, lose their lives. A lot of stuff goes on. But we'll get more into that maybe in another segment, but maybe not. You know, you beat a drum only so much. But just watch here. I told you about this in the segment earlier. Create the crisis. Provide the fix. Lock it down. You'll see what I mean.
The
here.
Biden administration says it is still working out to determine who was behind the recent cyber attack against Ukraine. According to the FP, Ukrainian officials are now saying they have evidence Russia was involved.
Oh, no doubt in my mind it was Russia. Absolutely, unequivocally was Russia. But they're going to deny it like Trump denies everything else and then just lies too. Same thing, same playbook.
Here with me now to discuss the ongoing threat from Russia to Ukraine is CNN host Fareed Zakaria. He spoke exclusively with the spokesman for President Vladimir Putin.
Okay, I appreciate Fareed's viewpoints. Tries to give a good, balanced, objective, overall sense of whatever issue it is that he's working on.
Putin, who claims somehow that Russia is not rattling the saber here. Have a listen to what he said.
You know, international observers say that there are Russian troops not wearing Russian uniforms, but there are Russian troops in Donbass.
There are no Russian troops of Donbass. I'm a spokesperson to Kremlin, and I officially can tell you that there are no Russian troops on Donbass and on Ukrainian soil. But there are Russian troops on the territory of the Russian Federation next to Ukrainian border.
So there's a perfect example. Deflect from what was the truth, then put a position that is factual, and this is another perfect way of, this is how the intelligence game works, folks. Deflect from the reality that is correct, and then provide a different alternate position and just stick with it.
Borders. And we find it necessary to keep those troops there in front of the very tense situation and very unfriendly environment created by various training of NATO jet fighters, NATO spy planes.
So here is the crisis. Create the crisis to justify your actions. Hey, You gotta wake up and friggin' figure this kind of stuff out, folks. These guys will friggin' rob you in the middle of the night and then say you're the bad person and they're the good guys. It's just the way they work.
NATO's military infrastructure moving towards our borders. We have to respond. We have to take measures of precaution. That's why we have our military guys on our territory there.
Do you have some kind of a timeline that you are, at which point you will then say the negotiations have failed, and are you then prepared to take military action?
Well, we're not speaking about military action.
Oh, of course not.
You have to understand it. No one is threatening anyone with military action. This will be just a madness to do that. But we will be ready to take counteractions.
Okay, as soon as he says but, you know the narrative is going the other way, which is what they're going to do. Take countermeasures. So they create the crisis. They're going to put a deadline. Nobody will meet the deadline. Then that'll give them justification to do what they want to do. This is how they operate. Did that with Crimea. You know, once they're empowered, like Trump was after the Mueller probe and the first impeachment, who do you have in his office? Sergey. Mr. Sergey. Him and Sergey sharing a Coke together. Nobody else there to witness it. You gotta love it.
Fareed Zakaria joins us now. And Fareed, to hear him there claiming, I mean, I suppose he can claim there are no official Russian troops in eastern Ukraine, but everyone knows the U.S. has credible intelligence that these are Russian-backed forces, Russian weapons, and have been for a number of years here.
No doubt about that. Guaranteed. That's how they operate.
You heard statements like that, and you also see
always have to have the advantage
from the Kremlin about just what they're demanding in exchange for backing off here. Do you see a path to agreement, or do you see a rationalization for war?
I'm not going to get more into this, but I'll tell you something. Don't take these guys lightly. They'll take the Ukraine. And it won't take much for them to spring into action. But Putin knows Trump's got a lot of heat on him. He needs a diversion as well. But understand, Trump throughout the whole time, I want to strengthen ties with Russia. Russia are good people. I want to strengthen ties with Russia. And even behind the scenes in the West Wing, don't piss off Putin. I don't want Putin pissed off at me. And there's a lot more going on with Russian covert operations with the U.S. for a number of years now. And you have to question, you're supporting an ex-president of the United States that supports Russia, that are doing things like what they're doing with the Ukraine now? Just use, you know, you've got some intelligent people in the U.S. You've got some great talent there. Just stop and put the pieces of the puzzle in the proper place. And I'll explain another thing. Edward Snowden was being interviewed by a guy, and he asked him about Trump. And he says, I don't know a lot about him, but one of the things he did say, because I'll tell you this, Edward Snowden's a pretty pragmatic guy, and he's actually pretty smart. And one of the things he said is, Trump's a guy that wants to be loved. Okay? So, Trump's got this bad characteristic. Knowing that he wants to be loved, if somebody makes fun of him, he wants to get revenge. Eh? It's just, you know, character out of a cartoon strip. When he doesn't get his way, he's got to stomp his feet, get revenge. Doesn't matter how bad it hurts people. Revenge is a very bad thing. So you got a guy that wants to be loved. You got a guy that wants to be number one, the pursuit of power, more than anything else. So do anything for the pursuit of power. So wants to be loved, do anything for the pursuit of power. And a guy that's a narcissist to the degree I've never seen ever in my life. And I'm sure a lot of historians can state that unequivocally as well. So you really have to question here. You had a guy that was impeached twice. The Russian collusion, it was real. I know the guy that set up Donald Trump with Putin. Originally it was with Yeltsin because the connection, the old family ties, was with Yeltsin. And Yeltsin put Putin in place because Putin was better for the position for what needed to be done over the course of many years. Putin's not from a wealthy family. And then all of a sudden he's worth $56 billion, $73 billion, $200 billion at the beginning of January 2020 or thereabouts. You know, there's so much money laundering going around the world. The plan was hashed and put together in 1992. It gave rise to the Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, Pandora Papers, and David Cameron, Prime Minister of the UK, had to resign because of this. You just do not realize what has gone on. And the side effect of what did go on was all the Russian people have suffered because of it, will continue to suffer. You know, these were IMF funds, denuclearization, sell-off of assets, military armament assets, of the deconstruction of the former state of Russia, all sorts of things. Precious metals, you name it. And you got to understand, a lot of these armaments got sold in the black market. Even some of those guns got into the streets of the United States of America. And you have this guy Trump, Republican Party for Law and Order. Well, listen, Trump, with what he was doing, he was all part of it. These guns, you know, people who do stuff for money, and that's all they care about, money and power. Greed, money, and power. Okay? So, folks, it's time to wake up. Take back your country. Live with love, peace. Give dignity and honor back to people. This arms and rioting is just nonsensical. It's not the way to go. Love, peace, balance, and harmony. That's the way you need to go, folks. Love, peace, balance, and harmony. It's the only way. Okay, so I'm going to call it an end. And even send love and peace to your enemies. May be hard for you to do, but it's the best thing you can do. So I'm going to send love and peace, balance and harmony to all human beings on this planet, We all need this at this time. So take care. All the best. Michael J. Talk to you guys soon. Ciao for now.